guys, welcome back to my channel. I thought I would do this year in review as one of the first videos I do for this fiscal year 2019 because it is New Year's Day. Everyone else has been doing theirs beforehand, but I am a purist and I wanted to wait until actual year was over before I did my wrap up for December and my wrap up for the year. So this is my wrap up for the year. And I have notes. So I did the year in review that Gabby reads does. So I will link her and the questions down below. And I'm also gonna do a little bit of Goodreads stats too, because some of the questions for the review are the same as the Goodreads stats. So I figured I would do the Goodreads stats and then go through the questions for the review. That way they kind of answer each other. So let's start off. I read 107 books. So question 1 on the review is how many books did you read and did you hit your goal? My goal was 75. I read 107, so yes. I also read 41,798 pages. My shortest book was I Hate Fairyland Volume 2, which I actually do have around here somewhere, but I forgot to go get it, so I will just put a picture up for you guys. The longest book that I read is Kingdom of Ash at 992 pages. The most popular book that I read is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone that had 5,616,727 people reading it. The least popular book that I read was The Shoebox Funerals that only had 69. My average rating is 4.2. I have a tendency to give most of my books 3s and 4s. I do have a decent number of 5s and occasionally I'll have a 2. But I very rarely have 1s. If it's a 1-star book, I don't finish it. And I don't DNF books very often, but when I do, it's because they're gonna be a 1-star and I can't make myself read them. So I don't have 1-star books, honestly. I do wanna, however, keep track of my DNFs this year. Last year and the year before, I never kept track of them. So this year, I plan on keeping track of those. And then the highest rated book that I read was A Court of Mist and Fury. That was rated at 4.67 and I gave a 5 star, so I helped with that. Now for the books and for the review thing, we already went over question 1. Question 2 is most read genre, and that is fantasy. It's definitely my favorite. The longest and shortest is number 3, which we went over, I Hate Fairyland and Kingdom of Ash. Favorite book published in 2018. So here's a funny little fact. I only read 21 books that were published in 2018. So only about 19% of the books that I read were new releases. Everything else was backlist. So I didn't have a ton to choose from here, but my favorite book published, again, was Kingdom of Ash. My favorite debut book published in 2018 was The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw. I did this as a buddy read, and the buddy read that I did it with, she wasn't overly fond of it, but I liked it, so. My favorite book not published this year, I went for The Court of Mist and Fury because when I do my favorites and my least favorites, I basically lumped Sarah J. Maas in as one entity because I literally read every single Sarah J. Maas book except for Catwoman this year for the first time. So she's my favorite new author and she is also my favorite this year. I'm a little bit of Sarah J. Maas trash. Hold the little. A book that lived up to the hype. Okay, and so for the book that lived up to the hype, again, I'm going with Sarah J. Maas because everyone's been hyping it. It's like a extremely loved or extremely hated series of books. Both series. I read all of them, as I just said. They're my favorite, as I just said. So there's my hype book. So the book that I thought didn't live up to the hype was Anything in This World. I read the first book from the Stalking Jack the Ripper last year in 2017, and then my friend was like, please just try it. So I read this one in 2018. They're okay. I just don't really like them. The way Audrey Rose talks about how women are supposed to act and how she doesn't act the way that women are supposed to act, it bothered me. It's like reading a fat rat book where the author or the main character won't stop talking about being fat. And as a bigger girl, I understand that those are thoughts that cross your mind, but they're not everything you think about. Whereas in this book, it's supposed to be feminist, but it's everything she thinks about. And it just drives me nuts. If she stopped thinking about what is proper so much, I may have actually liked these books a lot more. But because of the way that they went, I gave these books 3 stars. To me, they don't live up to the hype. And I have to listen to them because I cannot read them because she drives me so crazy. But listening to them, I can kind of gloss over some of the less thrilling parts. So definitely a least hype book. Number 9 is your biggest accomplishment in books. Again, it's 992 pages. That's the longest book I've ever read in my entire life. Biggest accomplishment so far. Until I get to Brandon Sanderson, and then I have a feeling that's going to blow us out of the water. But as of right now, that's it. My favorite character in any book is Rhysand, because I love him. I love all of them. I love this little group. I love Cassian and Az. I love them all so much. And then the next question is least favorite character. My least favorite character through this entire series is Eddie. I just want to take a bat to his head because he drives me so nuts. He is such a narcissistic, backstabbing jerk, which I get is the point. That's what he's supposed to be. But oh my gosh, if you have seen the movie or if you have read the first book, he only gets worse. I am almost done with the 3rd one and it's just, ooh, he makes me so mad. So I mean, it's a good mad and a bad mad. It's not like it's like I love to hate. Like I love to hate this character. These are really, really good books and I love to hate this character. All right, so number 12 is the most shocking moment in a book. And to me, I think that Nevernight was pretty darn shocking. I don't know if it's necessarily the most shocking, but when I was going through my list of books that I read this year, this is the one that stood out to me the most. This is the one that I was just like, oh yeah, the end of that book. Oh my goodness. So this was one of those books that I absolutely loved once I got through the first 100 pages. So it wasn't a 5-star book for me because I struggled through those first 100 pages, but it was still one of my favorites of the year because it was so good at the end, and that shocking little twisty crap that happened at the end, I was just blown away by. So this is gonna go for my most shocking scene in a book, and if you've read this, you know what the end is about, you know what I'm talking about. So now that you've watched about 10 minutes of this video, is it any surprise when I say my favorite couple? Yes, yes, favorite couple, yeah. Do I need to say any more? Probably not. Okay, so for the next question, it is the best written book. I had a little bit of trouble trying to figure out how I wanted to classify best written because stories are definitely different. Quality of story, like Sarah J. Maas books, are so much fun to read. Are they the best written books? No. They're just the most fun for me to read. And so I was trying to think of a book that was really, really well written. This one just made me laugh so much. And the writing was so interesting. I loved the way that it was written. So to me, this was the best written book. My Lady Jane is about the 9 Days Queen, Lady Jane Grey, and I have a bunch of stuff up about it from when I originally read it and from the little vlog I did while I was reading it. So I think there's enough information on my channel about this particular book, so I'm not going to go into any more. But the way it was written was just fabulous. And this is why this is going to go into my best written book. All right, I'm not sure if this one's going to count, how this one's going to count, but this one's supposed to be the book that I pushed the most people to read over this year. And that is The Nightingale. Technically, I read this book at the very end of 2017. This was like a late November 2017 read. So I didn't have a lot of time to tell people to read this book. But this is the one that anyone wants a really good book, a heartbreaking book, a book that you're going to cry your eyes out with, a book that's going to mean something that's a historical fiction. All of those things, I sent them to this book. So I gave the most props for this book this year, even though I didn't read it this last year. So this was a 17 read, but I still talked it up at 18. So I'm still gonna make this count, because other than this, I don't know what I talked up the most. Again, Sarah J. Maas. I figured we should go for a little more variety here than just putting up those books and saying this is my year. You know? No? Okay. All right, I had to go grab a book really quick because I forgot to grab my favorite cover of the year. And I'm just gonna do this. This one was published this year and I have not read it yet. This one was published last year and I read it this year. But look how pretty. Look how pretty they are. Best covers ever. Okay, so for my favorite adaptation, which is the next question, my vote is Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, which we do not have. My daughter read it and loved it and loaned it out to one of her friends. So hopefully I'll have it back sometime in the near future, all in one piece. I get really nervous giving my books out to people that I know and trust. She told me that this girl's a massive bookworm and that she knows and trusts her, so hopefully it'll come back in one piece. But that was by far my favorite adaptation for this year. I watched a couple of adaptations for books I have and have not read, and that one will definitely hold the favorite spot for a while. But we watched Crazy Rich Asians last night, and that one was pretty good too. But still, Simon. It's Simon. So, there is not a lot of books that I read this year that made me cry. I am a cry at the drop of a hat type person. I'm a laugh out loud type of person. And the books that, in this next two questions, is asking laughing and crying. Crying, two big fat books that were very emotional. This one, my jaw ached because I was crying. I was reading this while subbing for a class at school, and they were working on a project. They didn't need any help, and I was just sitting there bored, so I started reading my book. And I started crying in a room full of 9th graders. Trying to hold back the tears made my jaw ache. This one I read in the privacy of my own home, and the twist at the end was horrible. So, crying books. So on the flip side of crying is laughing. Laughing books. Oh my goodness gracious, these books are terrible. This one I have never laughed so much through an entire series as I have laughed through these books. And they're not short. They don't look that long, but they're about 500 and some odd pages each. So this one's a little over 500, the second one's a little under, the third one's a little over. And they are hilarious. I have spent so much time laughing in these books. This one, again, also, I laughed the entire way through. The way it was written, the way the narrators talk to you, the changes they made to history, laughter. Constant, constant laughter. Question number 20 is one I've already answered. It's favorite author, and that was, of course, Sarah J. Maas. She's a new to me author, and she's now one of my favorite authors. She will definitely be an auto buy, and I'm just kind of sad I didn't get to read Catwoman this year. That way I could have said I read every one of the books that she published ever in 1 year. But I didn't. I'm one short. So number 21 is a guilty pleasure read, and pretty much any of the romance books I read will fall under this, but I'm going to put The Stone Prince up because this was a reread for me. I think it's the third time I read it, and I liked it so much, and I wanted something cute and trashy that I had to read it again. So The Stone Prince is my guilty read for the year. Guiltiest read for the year, because I had several guilty reads, and that was probably the guiltiest. Number 22 is favorite reread. The entire Harry Potter series. I read this one twice this year, and I'm on the last one right now. And that one is, I already read it once this year, and I read it once in 2018, and so I'm going to read it once in 2019, and I have a tendency to just These are those books that if I need to calm down, I need to relax, I can't go to sleep, whatever the situation, I turn to Harry Potter because they're my favorite books. They are my catalyst books. They're what got me into reading, and this was my favorite read for this year. My another guilty pleasure read I have is Twilight, which I did not read this year. I read last year, or I didn't read in 18. I read in 17, and that would have definitely been the guiltiest if I had read it, but I had not. But these are definitely my favorites. I love these books. I have them in several different editions now. I got more for Christmas. And yeah, my favorite rereads of all time. And I will probably reread them again in 19. I know for a fact I'll at least finish Deathly Hallows because I'm only like this much through it. I just started it. They just got to the first Horcrux. They are tracking down Umbridge as we speak. So yeah, favorite rereads. So as far as nonfiction goes, I read one nonfiction, so I guess that would qualify as my favorite nonfiction. So the next question is your favorite nonfiction. I read Jewel, Never Broken. It's her autobiography. I read that listened to it as an audiobook. It was the book I was listening to fall asleep before I started Harry Potter again. And I just lay there at night listening to it because she's got this beautiful, heart-wrenching story. She talks about how she came up with her songs. She sings in the books. And I don't think that reading that book would have done it justice. You need to listen to that book because Jewel actually sings in it. She talks about her life and her journey and what it was like growing up in rural Alaska with abusive parents, one that was just not there and one that took advantage. Her mom was never living with them, and when she ever she did make contact with Jewel, it was to steal money from her or take something from her. So she was really an absentee / abusive parent. Her dad was just more absent. He was physically there, but not emotionally. And it talked about this huge journey that she had going to a special private school and traveling the world, well, at least, United States, Mexico. So she's at least traveling a part of the world. But it was talking about how these incidences shaped who she was, shaped her relationship with her parents, shaped her music, and it was beautiful. So I only read one nonfiction book this year, but it was a good one. So Jewel will be my favorite nonfiction book for this year. All right, and then now we're down to the very end. The last question is, how did I feel about this year and what do I want to do different next year? I felt this year was really good. I really liked most of the stuff I read. I put down anything I didn't like. There was a few things that I kind of just pushed through, and we'll go over the best and the worst when I do that video. But I think that it was a really great reading year. I, of course, have this enormous TBR that is completely out of control. And so for 2019, I want to cut back on my reading. I want to cut back on my I keep saying reading. Cut back on my buying, which I have 3 boxes coming in from Book Outlet for Black Friday and Boxing Day sales. So we're gonna say that I messed up a little bit at the end of 18 when I was trying to cut back, but I'll do better in 19. I want to try to read the books I have and not buy so many. But I also want to try to up my reading more. My goal, I would love to get to 200 books sometime in the next few years. So I figured I read 100 this year. Maybe I'll shoot for like 125 for 2019 and slowly work my way up. So like within the next couple of years, I can hit the 200 mark and start blowing through the books I have on these shelves. But other than that, I'm super happy with what I've been reading. Every year, my reading gets more diverse in genres, in types of books I'm reading, YA versus adult, and I love fantasy, I love romance. I will pick up and try pretty much anything. I'm really liking historical fiction these days. I'm still not a big nonfiction reader, but I'm working on it, and I just want to be able to read more types of books, more genres, more diversely, just more broadly different types of books. And I think I'm doing pretty well. I still am very heavy on the YA side, but I'm slowly making a shift away from that. So yeah, those are my goals for next year as far as what I want to change. And so far I'm happy. I've got quite a bit under my belt this year and I'm proud of it. So I will talk to you guys in the next video. I still have a couple more to do today, you know, wrapping up the year and wrapping up December. And then we can start fresh for January. So I will see you guys soon. Bye.